Are iridescent horrors any good? Well, this video isn't about them being good, though they are. It's the fact they are now casualty replenishment heroes, which makes them pretty much essential in Tzeentch factions, because they needed this option. I always thought they were fine besides, just a bit flimsy, but useful. Let's peer deeper into the mysteries. Recruited for a paper cost of 900 favor and needing 225 upkeep per turn, this single entity comes with 3,408 health base on Ultra and 600 barrier hit points. Armor is a paltry 20, but physical resistance is 20 as well, and that can count for a lot. Leadership is a decent 65, speed is 38 base, melee attack is 3 to start with and is both magical attack and flaming. Attack interval is 4. Splash target size is medium and max target damage is 5 per splash. Melee defense also starts at 30, which makes this one of the least robust melee characters you can find, but hey, cast your character. Weapon strength is 300, split between base 210, armor piercing 90. Charge bonus is 20 and mass is 500. The horror also comes with a ranged attack. Ammunition 20 default, range 130, missile damage is listed as 338, and this too is magical attack and flaming. Each projectile actually does 203 base damage and 67 armor piercing, but reload time of 8 skews the figure. Total accuracy is given as the standard 20. Calibration distance is 18, and within that, the calibration area is a pinpoint accurate 1.2 meters. Penetration cap is medium, and the absolute max targets penned is 5. In other words, the ranged attack is clearly better and more dangerous than the melee. This unit inflicts fear, has fire whilst moving, has all the demonic weaknesses, and of course, can learn all kinds of spells from whichever lore one is devoted to, Metal or Tzeentch. On a disc of Tzeentch, or as I like to call it, a Screamer Frisbee, upkeep rises to 275, health goes up to 3,808, and the only meaningful differences are flight, which is a big difference indeed. Flight speed of 105, and charge speed of 130, if you dream of using this in melee. Oh, charge bonus goes up to 35, and mass goes up to 1300. On a Burning Chariot, upkeep goes up to 350, health rises to 4,996, speed dips to 85 with a charge speed of 115, and here things get interesting. Splash target size goes up to very large, and max target damage goes up to 8. Weapon strength goes up to 380, split between 115 base and 265 armor piercing. Again, a charge bonus of 35, and mass is 1800. Point being, I've seen these in combat with Exalted Flamers, and they are shockingly disruptive, and even consistently damaging in melee. I mean, for messing around with an infantry fight, you could do worse. Clearly, it shouldn't be your first option, but in terms of putting a thumb on the scale, being able to charge in and hit with good armor piercing value really can help. As a final tidbit, the Burning Chariot has Strider, relevant for if you have to plow through some trees to slam into the enemy's rear. So, new to the revamp of Shadows of Change with patch 4.2, the Iridescent Horror becomes a casualty replenishment hero similar to the Warrior Priest for the Empire, which is great and badly needed in the faction. Much like those priests, the map passive is Stimulate Growth, something else that strengthens the faction for building an empire. The other actions are Damage Building, niche at best, Wound, quite ordinary, and Assault Units, which has the potential of really helping you soften up an enemy before a critical battle. This is less likely with Legendary Lords, but second stringers can be under major threat. Specialist is the same old cost reduction. In the top line, Invulnerable Through Change is a basic 10% missile resistance boss. I didn't see an actual missile resistance as its standard, but that may be a unit card oversight. Don't hold me to it. Heats Nurgle as melee attack and weapon strength if you're ever fighting a Nurgle faction, which may or may not ever happen in Immortal Empires, depending on what happens. The spell tree is exactly what you'd expect of the respective caster lines, and I will note that recent patches have made the Blue Fire of Tzeentch more effective as a homing spell, which is just making your bread and butter single target spell that much more effective. The midway skill, Prismatic Plurality, is a minus 10% to spell cooldown, not the usual evasion skill, but you have the disc mount for speed. Finally, at rank 13, you get to pick from 3 Locus Abilities as with other Chaos heroes of this type, with Locus of Change serving as an area effect 22 second, 25% missile damage buff for your allies, like a Gunnery Wight, but for fireballs and streams of blue or pink flame. Locus of Conjuration, which has the potential to jack up your Winds of Magic power recharge by a fat amount for 20 seconds, and Locus of Transmogrification, summoning a unit of blue horrors that you can use much like zombies up to twice per battle. I don't view any of these as having the same impact as some of those in other rosters, but they're far from nothing. If you're going with a missile-heavy army, the first can be a huge boost in the short term, and you might like the power recharge too, if you don't have a mass horrors army, which might make it redundant. And a summons can be useful as a way to keep your firing lines from being overrun. Now, for how you use the Iridescent Horror, in terms of battle it hasn't changed much. The improvements are mostly to utility in the faction itself. If you don't have a rank 20 Immortal Horror, you want to rush getting one on a disc as quickly as possible and try very hard to keep them alive. Use them to harass the enemy with ranged fire, use spells as appropriate, and generally make nuisances of them. But they don't have the barrier hit points to spare to play hit and run like, say, Kairos could. On the other hand, the discs are faster and the horror is nimble. In fact, what's different is addition by subtraction. It used to be that you had no melee lords except a Demon Prince, and while that was an interesting diversion, they could still cast magic, making every lord extremely skill point hungry even compared to usual, and losing one rarely hurts. Now that you have Chaos Lords of Tzeentch, one's able to tank and handle anti-large duty on their own, a weakness of the faction until late game. Having an Iridescent Horror means you still have access to magic, a Tzeentch army's bread and butter and necessary for the army ability mechanics, without the lord having to handle that duty, freeing yours up to buff troops. Just keep in mind that the low HP pool means that overcast blowback is going to hurt. But, now that blue fire is improved, death by 1,000 little fireballs is completely viable, and with time, you can take down even terrifying opponents before the main lines engage. Or at least it's possible. In the end, the horror is there to support your cause, and within its limits, he's very useful and very fitting for the faction. There are a few truly bad heroes in the game, and this one became so much more useful just by existing, because that casualty replenishment was a huge faction ball and chain weighing it down, and that means these heroes are a substantial net benefit for you. Take care, and have fun teaching your enemies to play Fetch the Fireball. Of course, they will get burned.